And as we promised you today, Rishi Sunak will deliver his first speech as Chancellor of the Exchequer to a party conference in Manchester today. Nina is there and can speak to the man himself. Good morning, Nina.
Yes, good morning to you both. Good morning to everyone at home. I keep saying, don't I, this is a very stormy winter we are heading into. Record-breaking inflation, utility bills soaring, and as that happens, government support schemes that we've seen over COVID wrapping up at the same time. A big speech then today for the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, who joins me now. Welcome to Manchester. Temperatures are dropping, cost of living is rocketing. Could there be a worse time to take £20 a week off the most vulnerable families?
Well, we put in place certain things to help people deal with the most acute phase of coronavirus, and the temporary uplift to universal credit was one of those, like furlough, for example, that has also come to an end. But what I'd say is the good news is the plan for jobs that we put in place a year and a half ago, when people feared unemployment was going to reach 12%, it is working, that plan, and we have doubled down on it today, extending that support to make sure that everybody has the skills and the opportunities they need to find fantastic, well-paid work.
With universal credit, because we live in a very different world now to what we did pre-pandemic. Prices are going up. I want to talk to you about Tracy, who's one of many people we've spoken to. She's a care worker. She worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic. She's left with less than £30 a week when all of her bills have been paid. When she loses this, she will be going straight into debt. She's already having to talk to a creditor about that. How do you feel about people like Tracy and thousands of others like her?
Well, for all people like Tracy or everyone else, there's lots of different things we're doing to help them. And I think I'd take a step back. First of all, I think if you look at what we've done over the past 12, 18 months, I don't think anyone could accuse me or the government of not wanting to help people like Tracy or support them. We're not dogmatic about this. And we just have, if I could just answer, we just have a different approach to how we think best to help them. So, for example, for those that want to find well-paid work, we've increased the national living wage, we're providing retraining opportunities for them, we're funding skills, whether it's skills boot camps or
as a carer, we stood on our doorsteps and clapped for her.
And just very recently, we announced £12 billion of investment to go into both the social care system and the NHS, the social care workforce. This situation today.
So this doesn't address the money she's losing on Wednesday.
So the situation for her over the winter, what I would say is the following. So if she needs, Tracy or others need help with some of their bills, just the other week we announced £500 million in a support fund for families through the winter period. So families like Tracy could receive £100, £150. That will help the most vulnerable families.
Does that not translate to a 20th of what we're seeing in the uplift? But that's £500 million compared to £6 billion. So the numbers aren't there, are they? All of the Tracys can't be supported, can they, through that?
You're comparing two very different things. There was something that was there for coronavirus when we were suffering the worst economic recession in 300 years, and there's support in place now to help people get through the winter. So actually £150 can make an enormous difference to someone in those circumstances.
But there's just not enough there for every family like hers, is there?
Well, actually that will cover around 3 to 4 million of our most vulnerable families in the country, but that's just one part of some of the support that's in place to help them. Last year we increased something called local housing allowance. That's an extra £1 billion a year. So depending on someone's circumstances, that could be worth £600, £650 for a family. We provided support of £150 for council tax bills, and we already have, you mentioned energy bills, we already have multiple ways to support people with energy bills. So someone on, if I could just finish, because you asked a question, so someone who's in receipt of various benefits can receive top-up payments of £25 a week when the temperatures drop. There's something called the Warm Homes Discount, which is worth about £140 to families like Tracy. So there are lots of things in place to help people get through the winter.
Let's talk then about your job announcement. So your plan for jobs, £500 million. That's to add to the Kickstart programme that's already in place, but that hasn't worked. There was a £2 billion budget to get 250,000 young people into jobs. So far, fewer than 100,000 are in them. The CBI say you will be measured by your ability to get people back into work. So far, that is not happening.
Well, so I probably respectfully disagree. If you think a year and a half ago, people were predicting unemployment to reach 12%, millions and millions of people unemployed. Now, as a result of the actions we've taken, as a result of our plan for jobs, unemployment today is less than 5%. It's been falling for 6 months in a row, and there are record numbers of job vacancies.
So actually,
I think that is a plan that is working. And you talked about the Kickstart scheme.
But you must know that these vacancies are not necessarily in places where people need to find the work.
You asked about unemployment and getting people into work. Record job vacancies, an unemployment rate that is lower than America, Canada, Spain, Italy and France, to me is a plan that is working.
looking at the plan that you're going to announce today, you're offering careers advice to people, you're committing to opportunity. Chancellor, it sounds very wishy-washy. It doesn't sound like it's actually creating jobs. And at the moment, that's the very least people would expect of you to commit to opportunity.
So if I could just answer the question, I don't know what's wishy-washy about an unemployment rate that is lower than 5%, falling for 6 months, and lower than America, Canada, France, Italy and Spain, in the face of people telling us that the unemployment rate was going to reach 12%. There's absolutely nothing wishy-washy about that. That is a plan that has delivered for people. The Kickstart scheme is at the heart of that. 70,000 young people are having their lives transformed as a result of that scheme. It's been stood up at record time. It's delivering, which is why today we've extended
when
it.
the target was 250,000.
Yeah, the target was set at a time when the target was set at a time when we thought unemployment was going to reach 12%. So thankfully, because unemployment is nowhere near as bad as we feared, it obviously is not going to fulfill the same number of vacancies because there are not as many people out of work, which is a good thing. It's something to celebrate. But I would just say this, there is a similar scheme that was enacted by the last Labour government called the Future Jobs Fund. And you can go and look at the performance of those two schemes from the time they were announced to how many people are now in those placements. The Kickstart scheme is doing incredibly well relative to that benchmark, the only one we have, and I'm very proud of what it's doing.
What it isn't doing is addressing the current supply chain issue. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said we are in a period of transition. It's going to be difficult. Meanwhile, hotels are having to close. Animals are going to slaughter prematurely. Care homes are on their knees. While this training happens, there are lots of businesses which are disappearing.
Well, actually, businesses are advertising for a record number of job vacancies.
But they're not getting people into those jobs, are they?
Business confidence is very high. Business intentions to invest are very strong, encouraged by some of the things that we've put in place, like the super deduction. And businesses are creating, I think, almost record numbers of jobs. And we are doing our bit to support those businesses. So, for example, with apprenticeships, we are giving businesses £3,000 to take on a new apprentice, give them the skills and the opportunities they need. We've extended those apprenticeship incentives today. Kickstart is a scheme whereby we fully fund the business for taking on the young person. So actually we're working well in partnership with business to get people into well-paid work.
One of the criticisms of this government is that you do not necessarily recognise where these vacancies are, do not correlate with the people who are out of work. So if I lost my job tomorrow, I wouldn't necessarily be able to give up caring for my children and for a parent to go and work on a farm on the other side of the country. Is there a recognition that it doesn't necessarily work that way?
Yeah, that's why we've taken the pragmatic step in the short term to increase the number of visas for agricultural workers, for example. We have a seasonal agricultural worker scheme. We have made extra visas available over the winter period. So we are being pragmatic about it because it does take time for supply chains to adjust.
Those visas, the British Chamber of Commerce said it was like pouring a thimble of water on a bonfire. It's not enough, is it? It's not enough for the immediate...
Well, because I don't think we want to knee-jerk just reach solely for the immigration lever. Actually, because of all the interventions that we've put in place, we are moving towards a higher skill, higher wage economy. That is a good thing. That is good for this country. But we recognise in the short term there are some challenges as supply chains adjust, and that's why we've been pragmatic with some short-term visas.
Are you going to have to commit to increasing income tax before the next election? We recognise that we're in more debt to GDP levels than we've ever been in. Is it time to say it's time for those who earn more to pay more?
Well, recently we did make a significant announcement on tax, and it was a difficult decision to make, especially for a Conservative Chancellor and a Conservative Prime Minister. But we took that decision because we wanted to make sure that the NHS got the significant funds that it requires to help recover strongly from coronavirus. You started this interview talking about social care, and that those funds that are raised from that tax will also go into making landmark reforms in the social care system and investing over £500 million in the social care workforce, more than has ever been done before in this country's history. It will help people like Tracy, who you talked about at the beginning of this interview. And yes, it was a difficult decision, but that was the right thing to do, and social care and the NHS will benefit.
Everybody agrees that social care and the NHS are really important to this country, but increasing national insurance, freezing the income tax threshold, that brings 1 million of the poorest workers into paying more tax, and meanwhile those who are earning the most are not necessarily being taxed on their income. Is it time to make a shift in that area?
Well, actually, look, there's no way to raise £12 billion without looking at one of our big tax levers. So if you agree, as you said, that we need to invest more in the NHS and social care, there aren't that many ways to do it. And actually all the commentary, whether it was from the Institute of Fiscal Studies or Andrew Dilnott, these are respected independent people, or the Resolution Foundation, a think tank, all described that tax rise as progressive. And that's because those with the broadest shoulders who earn the most will pay the most. So the top 10%, 15% of taxpayers will end up paying over half of the bill for the tax rise we announced. That is a progressive way to raise that amount of money.
The very same people who are about to lose £20 per week will start paying more, will they not, in national insurance?
When you want to raise £12 billion, because that's the sums that are required to invest in the NHS and social care, there aren't very many ways to do it. You have to look at broad-based taxes, but it's important that that is progressive, and that's exactly what we did, and it was described as such by those who looked at it.
I just want to ask you about the Pandora Papers. Some of them revealed a prominent Tory donor who supported Boris Johnson's leadership campaign involved in corruption scandals. There are almost no background checks on donors as things stand with the Conservative Party. Does that need to change now?
So my understanding is, and obviously this is a matter for the party specifically, but my understanding is that we carry out compliance checks in line with the I think referendums and political parties legislation that was put in place by the Labour government, and those are the compliance checks that are required by law. Those are the compliance checks that the party carries out.
And finally, we saw the picture of you preparing your speech on top of some beautiful cushions. On days like today, what prep do you do?
Well, I'm here talking to you rather than prepping. No, I'm off to do a visit with the Prime Minister and talking about our plan for jobs, and then hopefully I'll have a chance to get back on top of those cushions once before I have to give the actual speech.
And a strong coffee. And your speech is 10 minutes earlier than you thought, isn't it?
It is. A bit less time to prepare.
So you've lost that 10 minutes of prep. Chancellor, I hope it goes well today.
Thank you very
Many thanks.
much.
As the Chancellor was saying, this all comes at a time when the furlough scheme is wrapping up, but the Chancellor arguing there that they've done a lot to protect jobs over the course of the pandemic, that the economy is bouncing back, though lots of people at home will be thinking there is a very difficult winter ahead. The speech begins at 10 to 12.
Nina, thanks very much. That's Nina live with Rishi Sunak.